There is an absolutely insane number in the exit polls from the New York City mayoral election. First, with hours left before the polls close, this race has already driven more voters to the polls than any race since 2001. And by the time it's over, it might be the largest turnout since the 60s. Second, these midterm and non-standard elections, they always tend to be a referendum on the party in power. In this case, that would either be Eric Adams or Kathy Hochul, or more obviously, President Trump. And this is what we've seen in every other election taking place. In Virginia and New Jersey, where they're picking new governors, and in California, where those who have already voted say they're overwhelmingly voting to support Proposition 50, the temporary counterweight to partisan redistricting by Republicans across the country. Every one of these other elections, half or more of the voters say their vote is against the status quo. California voters don't even want to redistrict because these radical leftists understand that free and fair elections are actually better than elections that are corrupt but easy to win. These voters are voting out of an obligation to fight against what's wrong, not necessarily out of a passion to build what's right. But in this series of elections, there is one major exception. In New York City, 90% of voters say that they are casting their ballot for Zohran Mamdani, not against someone else, not even Trump. Now, if you aren't super familiar with exit polling, to help you contextualize this number, in 2008, that figure for Barack Obama was about 50%. Half of voters were supporting him because of who he was, and half were voting against John McCain because they were terrified he would continue the Bush administration's policies, leaving Mamdani with a massive gap that for me is easy to explain. He's not winning that kind of loyalty because of who he is or what he looks like. He's not even winning it because he's on the left in a big blue city. Those are part of it, sure, but that alone doesn't explain 30 and 40 point gaps to the norm. In order to understand what makes him different, you have to understand he's not running to win an election. He's running because he feels compelled to help people. When you run because you feel driven by that kind of a commitment, it shows up as joy and passion even in the face of impossibly challenging work. Ultimately, regardless of what happens, and regardless of whether or not he's able to find success in the face of well-funded barriers, one thing has become increasingly clear. Every candidate on the left who wants to find success between now and 2028 needs to look no further than the why of Zohran Mamdani. This breaking news from the Washington Post will sound like Dixie Chicks to MAGA ears. If you're a Republican voter concerned with the impending spikes in healthcare prices, crushing home energy costs as you head into winter, the complete lack of affordable housing, or the nonstop inflation of food prices, you will be thrilled to know that Donald Trump is doing exactly what you sent him to D.C. to do. In the middle of a government shutdown when millions of Americans are struggling and the economy is flatlining for, I think, the 69th time, he's forcing his Justice Department to start a new investigation to try and prove that he wasn't throttled by Joe Biden to the tune of 7.5 million votes in the 2020 election, which, by the way, was the worst defeat of an incumbent president since 1980 and the most painful sting of rejection that Donald Trump has felt since Ivanka announced her engagement. Maybe the funniest thing is that in this article, his own employees are begging him to focus on the future, but he's not having any of it because he doesn't care about the future. He doesn't care about voters, Republican or Democrat. He's not trying to solve problems, and he's not trying to do great things. He's way past that now, because when he looks backward, all he sees are piling failures, and based on his many weird comments, when he looks to the future, all he sees is fear that he's not going to get into heaven. But back here on Earth, as he collects failures and even his smallest wins unravel faster than his ceasefire deal, all that's left for his second term is punishing people who opposed him in the past and rewriting history to paper over his failures so he can feel just a little bit better about himself while the rest of the world moves on without him.